Welcome everyone to our webinar series, Explore the Arts. Through this series, we've had expert speakers giving you guidance on how to prepare for a college experience in the visual and performing arts. Before we start with our last segment in this three-part series, I want to take a moment to introduce On Point Education Advisory, a boutique consulting practice committed to providing personalized guidance to students as they explore education options to institutes in the US, UK, Canada, Singapore, Hong Kong, Europe, and of course, India. We believe in giving 360-degree support to the student, working with their strengths to plan life in and beyond high school. Today, we will explore the musical arts with Amy Goldin, founder of COPA Inc., a consulting service that specializes in working with students exploring performing arts, studies, and careers. Amy has degrees in music from NYU's Steinhardt School and from the Aaron Copland School of Music. Like musicians everywhere, Amy wears many hats. That includes being a teacher, a performer, singer, songwriter, conductor, stage director, published author, and the parent of professional performers in music and musical theater. Amy has become globally known as the subject matter expert in the field of music and college admissions consulting. Thank you, Amy, for joining us today and helping us understand the nuances of music education and the particular application requirements for these programs. Before we start with the many questions sent in by our audience, I want to run a quick poll to gauge the areas of music they're most interested in. We've got a great response. 57% of the attendees are interested in vocal, 36% classical, 29% jazz. Instrumental music comes out as the second most popular. And then, of course, we have Western pop and musical culture and music technology. There are very few takers for cultural music, so.
Okay, that's good to know. A lot of singers out there.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. And very few in the cultural. Oh, I'm sorry. Surprising not to see so many music technology, but actually music technology gets woven into pretty much what anyone studies in music. So whether you plan to be an expert audio engineer or not, you will probably get some experience, exposure, and hands-on activities in music technology. So it's a good way to start it off. Thank you.
So just some housekeeping announcements before we get on with our questions. The video is going to be only on for the presenters. And please post your questions in the Q&A box. And Amy will get to them once she finishes with the entire presentation. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to start with the most fundamental question. When researching music programs, there are different options that come up. Some which are taught at universities and others that are offered by institutions which are focused only on the musical experience. How do they differ in the kind of programs they offer? And what are some of the factors that students should consider when narrowing down their options?
So these are great questions, and I want to say that a lot of the questions that we're talking about today were built upon the questions that you received ahead of time. So we're really discussing questions and concerns that are real and not abstract and come from real people with those concerns. So starting out with the different kinds of schools that there are, we take a look at the conservatories, which are basically mostly standalone individual schools that pretty much teach only those areas of the arts. In our case, music. Some of the conservatories have dance, and I'll use Juilliard, which is a very famous, worldwide famous school, as an example of a conservatory that has music, dance, and drama. So if you're a musical theater person, Juilliard is not necessarily the place where you're going to get that focused, intense study. We also have liberal arts schools where you may have a school of music embedded in a much larger university, or maybe even a smaller university or college. We want to just stay on that first slide for a moment. And yeah, we'll just go back to that.
Yeah, I'm just
going. So then we have schools that have simply a music department. So rather than having a music school embedded in it, you would have simply a music department. A music department will have fewer teachers, fewer courses, and also fewer requirements for a music major. Did that answer your question and go along with the that first part of the slide for
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just trying
Okay.
to um, figure out the
Okay, so I'll
context.
just
I'm
review
sorry.
that. Conservatory, uh, larger school, larger university that has a music school embedded in it, and then a music department within a larger school. And a larger school could have 1,800 students in it. It's just not a conservatory. It's a more liberal arts college. I'll use Swarthmore College, very highly academic school right outside of Philadelphia. Sigus Vanni is here from Philadelphia, and that's a school that has a music department. It's got a wonderful music department, but it's more limited in the offerings than a school that has a music school embedded in it or connected to it, such as Northwestern University, which has the Bienen School of Music, which is a completely separate school of music and yet has lots of liaisons in terms of curriculum and scheduling, and the students have access to both schools for all of those different kinds of courses. So we have these three different kinds of schools, and they're really different from each other. But it doesn't mean that a student has to apply to only one. I'm only going to apply to schools of music. You don't necessarily have to do that. You have to look at curriculum plans to see what they've got for you. So, speaking of looking at curriculum plans, what are some factors to consider when students are narrowing down their options? Well, the first factor goes back to the poll we just took. What is it that you want to study? And do you really want a singularly focused, laser focused Bachelor of Music degree where the majority of your coursework will be in music? Or do you want something that's going to give you more options, more choices, more pathways, possibly the potential for a double major or a strong major and minor? That's really a very, very basic question that you need to pay attention to. And also to keep in mind that a Bachelor of Music is not a simple and singular degree. If you take a Bachelor of Music, you then are majoring, you're going to be asked to major in what area of music, going back to our poll again. So if you're going to take a Bachelor of Music in singing, in voice, then that voice becomes your major within the Bachelor of Music. If you're a cellist, you're going to be taking potentially a Bachelor of Music in cello. You could take a Bachelor of Music in singer-songwriter studies. You could take a Bachelor of Music in jazz studies. And there are actually different differences and different pathways within each of those areas as well. So one of the things that you need to do is really know what it is you want to study in music, and then know how much of that music you really want to delve into and spend your time doing within that major. Um, we do have a question about career goals and salary goals, and do we want to discuss that now, or do we want to go?
We can come to that a little bit
I
later.
would suggest we come back to that. That's a kind of a big one.
Yeah. So, within all of these programs, there are different music degrees, right? You have the BA, you have the BFA, you have, so what should a student be aiming for? And do they typically complete their degree in 4 years, or does it take longer to to be qualified as a musician?
If you're playing music and you're doing music, you are a musician, and I want to clear that up. And people are going to hate me to say this, but you don't necessarily need that piece of paper that says Bachelor of Music on it in order to create that career that you may be looking for. But what a Bachelor of Music does is it gives you all of that coursework that the world of musicians, your fellow musicians who are older and wiser than you, maybe even more talented, maybe not, they have determined, school by school, that a student needs to study music for typically 4 years, and then needs to come out with a degree in music, and now we know that the student knows all of these various kinds of things about music and has done all of this music. So what's the difference in our areas of music? A Bachelor of Music, again, is that very, very laser focused, very highly um, very highly studied, and really you're doing music most of the time of your life while you're in school. It's very hard to do a Bachelor of Music along with a second major. A lot of schools won't even allow it or will make it very difficult. And there are time elements to that, there are logistical scheduling elements that fall into that. It's kind of hard to do. A lot of people think they want to do it, but when they see what the curriculum plans are, they realize it's just really hard to do, and I can get back to that in a moment. A BFA is largely relegated to doing a musical theater degree or a dance degree, so you're not likely to find too many BFAs in music. You might find something in the music technology or even the music industry area, but a BFA is really just a similar to a Bachelor of Music, except you're studying usually musical theater or dance. But it's that same kind of very, very focused, very, very intense kind of curriculum that you're being asked to follow. And it's the same thing. You are a dancer, and whether you have a BFA or not, you are a dancer. Having that BFA means you have gone through this course of study. Both of these are generally able to be completed in 4 years. The bachelor's degree generally is laid out to be a 4-year degree, 8 semesters. With If you follow what the school tells you to do, then you come out with that degree with all of that understanding, knowledge, and experience. The BA is a more flexible degree. We do have some slides on this, don't we?
Yes.
If you can get those going. So we do have the BA degree. The BA is going to be more flexible. It's going to have a much fewer requirements of coursework for a student in the area of music, whatever that, and you don't even have to have a major within a BA. So if you take a BM, like I said, you'd have to be taking a Bachelor of Music in singing, Bachelor of Music in audio engineering, a Bachelor of Music in playing cello or flute or violin. As a BA student, you don't even need to necessarily have a major. You can kind of float around. So if you're a student with a lot of different areas of interest in music, and you would like to be able to keep those all going and maybe take lessons in a variety of things and not be just so laser focused, a BA in music would allow you to not have to be that piano major, not have to be that singer-songwriter major, but just to be a music major. And then you have a lot more choices. It is much easier to do a BA and then have a second major, a full-on second major, even a couple of minors. A dual degree, much easier to do, and also definitely doable in 4 years. Do we want to talk about the postgraduate
Should we talk about the Bachelor
piece
of
of it?
Music? Do you want to touch upon anything else on the Bachelor of Music right now? Or
I think we can take some questions if we get them about that, but I think that's your basic format, your basic plan is if you want to study something in addition to music, it's going to be a lot easier to combine those with a BA. Won't be impossible, except in some schools they simply won't allow it.
right?
But in other schools, they will absolutely welcome it. So I'll use an example. Bard College in kind of like sort of the middle eastern section of New York State. Sweet little liberal arts college, small number of students. They have a conservatory. So that's one of those schools that is a school that has a music school embedded in it. And in their conservatory, they have a 5-year double major double degree program that everybody in the conservatory is required to do 5 years and two different majors. The major in the conservatory in their specific area, singing, instrumental, whatever, and something else in Bard College itself that is completely unrelated. And that's a requirement from that school. That's kind of unusual, but for someone who's looking for that, it could be a perfect opportunity to be in. And I'm not trying to sell Bard College over any other college, it's just a program that happens to exist there. But for the student who knows that they want to study music, and it would have to be in their particular area of music, and knows they want to study, let's say, biology, neuroscience, mathematics. They build it for you so that it's not so difficult. It doesn't have so many logistical and time elements that could bump into each other. But that's an unusual way of doing it. Many other schools, it's a little harder to do. There are other schools that also have put together programs that might spill over into 5 years if you wanted to do a second major. So yes, 4 years for a typical music degree, conservatory, liberal arts school, 4 years works. When you start adding in anything else, you may be starting to add in more time. And then, of course, potentially, if you've got to stay in school another semester, another year, you've got to pay for school for another semester, another year.
So before we move on to the next question, Saigus has sent a message saying Swarthmore music students can take lessons at Curtis and the college pays for that. Do you want to comment on that?
That's a perk
Okay.
that some of the schools that have or are closely physically closely related, located to a school like Curtis. And Curtis, for some, if anyone hasn't heard of Curtis, Curtis is one of our tippy top conservatories. So everyone seems to have heard of Juilliard. Fewer people seem to have heard of Curtis, but Curtis is definitely our top in our top list of schools of conservatories. So that's a perk. And for someone who just wants to continue to play and take their lessons and have that access, but still wants to study engineering at Swarthmore, it's a perfect setup. However, you have to be good enough to get into Swarthmore, and you have to be acceptable to the people at the teachers at Curtis. We're talking extremely high level of music proficiency as well as academic achievement.
Great, good to know that. So another question that had come in was, do students need to plan for a postgraduate program to be recognized in the music industry?
So that's a great question. It kind of piggybacks on the other question about a degree. The short answer is no. The short answer is a student needs to be proficient and talented and experienced at their instrument. And I use voice as an instrument as well. Does that come into play in a graduate program? Sure, you're going to get more teaching, more facilities to work with, more people to work with, more experiences in playing, more opportunities. Sure, you're going to get that laid out for you in a prescribed way, so you don't have to go looking for a teacher. You're going to go to, let's say, Juilliard and have that teacher from Juilliard who's probably either a Metropolitan Opera singer or plays with the New York Philharmonic or is some other world-class teacher. But do you need that for your recognition? You don't. And there are programs that many of the conservatories offer that are diploma programs where you can just keep on going with the depth of learning of playing and performing, because this is all about performing. So there are other post-bachelor programs that you can take that don't necessarily lead to the degree, because the degree is going to include things that some people may not want, which includes a lot of academic studies where you have to study from a book and take an exam and actually take real coursework. Not everybody wants to go on to that. It is very helpful to have a master's degree in your field if you have any interest, however, in going on to teach at the university level. It's much more recognized if you have either a master's or the terminal doctorate, which could be a PhD, a DMA, Doctor of Musical Arts. It could be a Doctor of Music Education. So to go on to be teaching at that level and not just be a guest teacher coming in and doing master classes, but getting a job at a university as a full-time professor, you do want to go onto that paper trail and get up to your terminal degree to be successful and to be marketable. But to be a better musician, you don't necessarily need to go for the master's degree.
Great. So thank you so much for shedding light on the different degrees, the different kinds of institutions that are there. And now I just want to touch upon what are the application requirements for music majors? We know that there's an audition, there's an art supplement. Could you walk us through that? And before you start, I just want to say there is a rainstorm outside, so I'm hoping that the Wi-Fi doesn't crash. So keeping fingers crossed.
Okay. Okay. So here we go. So portfolios, auditions, and art supplements. An audition is going to be required if you're trying to get into a Bachelor of Music program in whatever school you're going to. That's kind of a given. I don't have never heard of a Bachelor of Music does not require an audition. An audition is not necessarily the same thing as a portfolio. A portfolio is usually required for people who are looking at getting into a music technology program. That could be a Bachelor of Music or might be, as I said, a BFA. That's usually a portfolio, and a portfolio is usually, let's call it a collage or a montage of different works that you have done that show you to be a great candidate for that specific degree program. An audition is usually made up of specific high-level pieces that you will record, generally speaking, especially if you're in a not here in the United States. And of course, this is true for the UK schools as well. And you will probably be required to perform 2, 3, maybe 4 songs, and that's going to be dependent on you as if you're a singer or a singer-songwriter, the different kinds of songs that you'll be asked to perform, specific pieces and potentially some skills that you might be asked to perform if you're an instrumentalist. So if you're, let's say, an oboe player or cello player, violin player, there may be specific sonatas or specific movements from, let's say, a Mozart sonata, a Haydn sonata, something from Bach. Usually there's something from the Baroque, from the classical, from the Romantic, maybe from the 20th or 21st century pieces. You'll have to play some of those. And they're very prescribed, and every school will tell you exactly what it's looking for in terms of you giving them your audition. So an audition is an audition. A portfolio is a collage of things that you do that focus on the area that you're trying to get into, the major you're trying to do. Then we have the art supplement. And an art supplement is generally similarly could be either formatted like an audition with a couple of pieces in it, or could be formatted like a collage with several different versions of what you do. And that's usually submitted to schools that are the BA schools, the schools that do not have a BM, but they're welcoming your art supplement, which, by the way, could also be if you're a visual artist, you could provide a visual art supplement. And that's going to be different school by school. And I haven't said these words yet, and I probably should have. School by school. We're looking at school by school. Each school will have its own requirements, and some schools will not even accept an art supplement. They're just looking at you as the academic and community-based student that you are. And other schools will say, yes, we want to know you as an academic student. We want to know that what kind of a citizen of your community you are, and what else are you all about. So send us an art supplement. But they may give you some very, very closed parameters to what they're willing to accept. So they might say you can send us 2 pieces, or you can send us in your art supplement for your BA, and you could be doing a BA in biology or a BA in economics, a BA in whatever else, or even a BA in music, but it wouldn't necessarily be required. That said, there are a couple of BAs that are also audition-based, so you want to watch out for that. All your BMs are audition-based. Some BAs are. So you need to look school by school and major by major. Some requirements may be different from a flute major than they are for a tuba major or a vocal major. So you need to look school by school to see what they will welcome and what they will require.
Great. So I think that
Questions on that?
answers, yeah, that I think answers the question whether they need to include vocal and instrumental elements in their portfolio, because it would really depend from school to school as to what they would accept and what they require of the students. I do have a question for our international students. Many of them are interested in going to the US, Canada, or the UK to pursue an education in music or in the performing arts. Kids across the globe are learning the piano, string instruments like the violin or playing the drums. However, there are many instruments that are culture specific. I know we don't have a lot of people in the audience who wanted to know about that, but there were a few. And I was wondering that, could you include um, your pieces from like showcasing your talent on like the tabla, the Indian percussionist instrument?
Mm-hmm.
Would that
Mm-hmm.
be acceptable?
That would be acceptable in those art supplements in a wonderful way. If it's an art supplement that says, show us who you are, give us 5 minutes, up to maybe 10 minutes. I've never seen an art supplement that really went more than 10 minutes. So they're allowing you 5 minutes, and many schools will say, show us what you're all about. So someone who has studied the tabla might have show us something on a more solo basis, but could also potentially include something that they've done, which would be more an ensemble or even in a performance situation. Unless a student is going to a program that is specifically majoring, so here we come again with that music major in what? We don't have, as far as I know, too many Bachelor of Music degrees that are in a particular, let's say, Indian instrument. And because in the States, you would have to have that Bachelor of Music in percussion, your percussion audition, which would be very laid out for you very clearly on a school's website, is much more likely to say you have to play our basic skills, which in percussions, if there's any percussion out there, that's called a rudiment. So you would have your basic skills, a piece on the snare drum, a piece on a timpani, the kettle drums, a piece on a mallet instrument like a marimba or a vibraphone. And that major is really planning to teach you how to be better at all of those instruments. It's not planning to teach you how to be a better tabla player. There are a couple of schools, and I think Berklee School of Music in Boston might be one of them, that would welcome an additional, like an art supplement, like what else are you about? And if there's something that says, what else are you about? That's the place where you can include your Indian singing, your instrument playing. You might even include in something like that some singing, some playing, and some dance, because you're not trying to major in one of those areas. We don't have those kinds of majors, generally speaking. But something that might be helpful for a student with those interests might be to go to a school that has a very strong focus on ethnomusicology, the musicology of world music, learning world music, learning the background and performances in world music. That said, there are also many, many cultural music clubs and organizations that are student run in schools all over this country that would welcome you to come in and do what you do on a student club basis rather than within the format of your Bachelor of Music curriculum. So again, the flexibility of the Bachelor of Arts is going to be much more welcoming of that, for you to present it as what you do, and for you to continue doing it. If you come to Juilliard to study violin, put your tabla in a traveling bag and bring it with you, because you're going to find someone here to play with you. I am so sure of that.
So I have a question here. If a student is interested in getting a degree in percussion, they have the skill on the tabla, but they haven't had exposure to the drums or something. Would you recommend that they get in touch with the schools and talk to them about, share with them their videos or something like that? And do you think that could help open up some chances? Because there are students, not in the major cities, but, in the smaller towns, who may be very talented, but don't have any means of getting that exposure. Do you think it should they even try that?
Well, I don't think they're going to find the teaching that they want. They're not going to find the expert teaching here in the States in a particular university.
No.
So I think
the question was that they may have a skill on the tabla, but they want to graduate to other instruments, but they haven't had that exposure at their community level. do you think it would be of any benefit for them to reach out to the schools and explore the opportunity at all?
No, and I'll tell you why. You have to bring a level of proficiency to the beginning of your music degree. And the proficiencies that most schools are looking for are in Western music, in the Western instruments. So
Okay.
if I have a list of 30 schools that have percussion majors, and maybe the term is misleading because it should be Western percussion majors. They are all going to be asking for these basic rudiments, which are a basic set of skills. Kind of like it's the same thing as if you were going to be a piano major, you would have to demonstrate that you know how to play all the scales on the piano, which means the major scales, the minor, all three of the minor scales, arpeggios. These are basic skills that you have to demonstrate. You have the technique. If you haven't studied these Western instruments, you cannot go to an American school and start out as a total beginner. You have to have a level of proficiency that's pretty high. We don't have, in the UK, there's an ABRSM. In Canada, there's the Royal Conservatory levels of proficiency.
Mhm.
In the United States, most of our states each have their own version of a level of proficiency.
Right.
I'm a judge here in New York State for our singers, our vocal jazz singers, and our choral singers and our pianists, and I know what our levels of proficiency are. We have 6 levels of proficiency. The level of proficiency that takes you to being able to audition for a music program is generally levels 5 or 6, the highest levels of proficiency. And we're talking about being able to play Bach, Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, Schumann, Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, the major Western composers, the major Western music. So a student couldn't come to the United States and be a raw beginner, no matter how great their skills are on the tabla. It's nothing. And I'm a former percussionist myself, and one of my sons is a percussionist, so I can talk about this very specifically. Playing the tabla is nothing like, as beautiful and wonderful as it is, and as difficult as it is, it's just not at all the same the same instrument. It's like saying, if I'm really good, I can do, I can be a basketball player, but does that make me a good skier? I
Right.
can be really proficient at playing basketball, but I'm going to be on the bunny slope to go skiing. And so, but to get into school, I've got to be, a professional basketball player.
I think that's
So
great.
you,
Yeah, sorry. I think
I just
yeah,
kind of top
yeah.
of my head on that
No, no.
analogy.
I think that's great information for the young musicians who are on this webinar and their counselors too, because they they can use their time, in the next couple of years to build up their skills in the different Western instruments, to be able to go to a school of their choice should they want to do that.
Right. And they really have to, know the repertoire, know the music, and say, yes, I really do want to play this kind of music.
Right.
Wow, I love that Beethoven symphony. I'd love to play the timpanis in that Beethoven symphony, but people have to work a long time. As I said, here we have levels 5 and 6 as our top levels in New York State, and the understanding is that someone who's performing a level 6 piece has been studying that instrument for 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ABRSM, which I think is probably fairly popular in other parts of the world, that goes up to level 8. Now, their level 8 is pretty much maybe even a little bit higher than our level 6 is in terms of the kinds of music that is being played or sung, and the proficiencies that have to be known as well in music theory and understanding our scale structures, which are different from the raga scale structures. And it's not that one is better or worse, it's just that ours are the ones that are taught. So a student has to come in being completely literate at the
Okay.
Western music to get to look at a school that has a Bachelor of Music as a percussionist, as a singer, as a
So,
cellist.
so I'm glad you mentioned the ABSRM because that leads me to the next question. The different boards, so like the Trinity College London and ABSRM, and then you have the Canadian program, and then you have the American one. Is there one that is considered to be a higher qualification or considered to be more stringent in training than the other? I mean, would you recommend one over the other to the students?
I honestly wouldn't. I think any program that a student, it's kind of like being on a diet. Would I recommend any one diet to someone? No. If you stick to a diet, you're probably going to lose weight. Whether you choose to cut your carbs or eat Weight Watchers or whatever you choose to do, if you stick with it, it's going to show results. And whichever program you're doing not to show off that you hit level 8 because it doesn't matter. What's going to matter is in your audition. You can say that you got a level 8. You could have gotten it with distinction, but if you blow your audition, it's not going to matter what your resume says, what level your resume says that you achieved. So I don't think it matters. I think, and I've spoken to admissions people in all of these areas, they're looking for a level of proficiency that shows tremendous skill, tremendous music literacy and understanding, and shows that you practiced like a fiend for the past few years and you are a proficient performer and musician with knowledge and experience. And whether you're playing a Bach two-part invention or a much more involved Bach fugue, if you play it well, they're not likely to say, well, that other kid played the fugue and you can only play a two-part, so maybe we won't take you. If they didn't play the fugue well and you played the two-part invention, if there are any pianists out there, you know what I'm talking about. You played the two-part invention with style and grace and talent and technique and meaning and understanding, a school is likely to take you because you've got that potential. But you do have to have these basic starting points, and the basic starting points, the bar is very high for the basic starting points.
So just want to move on to, the big CV, the resume, the activities that kids need to show. The last year and a half have been pretty much zero, with no schools, no performance opportunities, no opportunities to go out and engage with the community. So what do kids do? How do they show their passion? How do they show their
Well,
talent? How do they show?
yeah, that's a great question. And the fact is that you were a musician before March 2020. And what did you do before then? And what did you do? If you were a musician, you didn't stop practicing, I hope. And many people didn't stop taking lessons. We teachers, and now I'll put on my music teacher hat, my voice teacher hat, we have found amazing ways to continue working with our students remotely. So hopefully a student who's really dedicated, and I understand that a lot of people got very depressed and for a lot of perfectly good reasons this year, and a lot of lives got upended, and I don't think any schools will fault you for any of those gaps. We all have these gaps in our musical lives, in our artistic lives, in our performance lives. But the question is, what did you do until then? And did you figure out a way to get through it? And if you didn't figure out a way to get through it, what's your plan for moving forward? So we definitely have students, and I have a student who created, she's a dancer, she's my college counseling client, she's a musical theater student, and she took over half of her parents' garage. She lives in California, and she created her own dance studio. She said, I need to keep dancing. She created her own dance studio. Her parents put down a special kind of dance floor, so it kind of got a little bit of spring to it. She created a wall of mirrors, and she got a bar, a ballet bar, and she watched videos, and she kept herself going and moving and created her own choreography. She was highly motivated, as you can see, and also had the funds to do that, which helps. I have numerous students who, once we all got over the shock of what we were living through, they said, how do I do this? Most students went out looking for opportunities, and our video chatting became our ways of communicating with each other. Social media, TikTok, all of those things helped us continue to create and continue to communicate and relate with each other. So whatever your story may be more narrative for that one year, But what's on your resume until March 2020? And what are your hopes and dreams for beyond fall 2022, we assume, or later than that? So, as and you've talked about starting a YouTube channel. I have a student who started a YouTube channel, and for her local community to play music, she usually plays pretty heavy duty classical music, and she started playing some of the more lightweight music, some music by John Williams from Star Wars, and um, you know, fun music for the community to enjoy. It didn't take away from her practicing for her auditions for a Bachelor of Music degree, but she added that, and that's going to go on her resume. She might even talk about it in some essays. So, what you're going to show is going to be a resume. It's going to be and that resume is going to be really important in the next couple of years to show how you got through, what you did. And yeah, you're not going to have as many things to do. You're not going to have your community orchestras and your honors orchestras and your ensembles and playing for the local shows, but you'll have other things that you either thought about or hopefully did. So it's really a cumulative experience. Your resume is of an entire landscape of you, and this 1 year is just one little spot on that landscape.
Great. I think that's fantastic advice for all students. I think, as the fall comes around and they're beginning to fill out their common applications, they're all wondering, what are we going to put down, and how will the admissions officers understand that we haven't had an opportunity to do all the things that we want to do. It's a tough one. I want to just come back to, when we were talking about the BA and the BM and the different schools. How do academics figure in all of that? Like when students are submitting their applications, are grades as important for a music major, or are they going to be evaluated on the basis of the talent? So does the rubrics kind of shift when you're applying for a music degree, or does that depend from institution or school to school, school to school?
School to school is a good starting point, and one standard that I can throw out there out of in this discussion that has very few standards across the board, very few things that I can definitely say are absolutes. I can definitely say it absolutely that in a conservatory admission process, your grades, or if you have any SAT scores, ACT scores, those really take a they're very, very low on the queue of what's important. If you have graduated high school, and sometimes even for students who haven't graduated high school, they're fine. Those conservatories are going to be 99% about your performance and your musicianship, your proficiency level, your achievement. It's all going to be about the audition, basically. And the other schools that we're talking about, for many of them, if not for most of them, your grades will have some impact. If you're going for a Bachelor of Music degree in, let's say, NYU, my own alma mater, there is an academic threshold that you have to be able to meet. And if you're not high enough, they're going to be concerned that you cannot do well in the non-music classes that they're going to require you to do. And that's a reason why they're holding students to a particular academic standard. So a Bachelor of Music degree in NYU includes probably about 30 to 40% of your coursework that's completely outside of music, that has to do with the core general education requirements of that school. So some English, some math, some science, some social sciences, psychology, history. You still have those requirements. And NYU wants to know that you're going to not be struggling through their courses while you're also taking on that very difficult and intense degree that is a music degree that is far more time intensive as well as brain and activity intensive. So there's a reason for that. So many schools will have some kind of academic threshold that they really want you to hit. They may not have a specific GPA, like you've got to have a 3.8 to get into NYU. There might be a little bit of leeway there For the music programs, again, I'll use NYU as an example because there are other schools that do the same thing. They are not going to require SATs, and they haven't. Even BC, before COVID, they did not require SATs from their music students, both in Steinhardt, that houses the BM degree, and in the Tisch School of the Arts, that houses the drama, as well as the Clive Davis Institute of Music, which is a music business and music technology degree. They've not required the SATs. There are some other schools in this country that have not required the SATs for those majors. But if you try to get into engineering at NYU, they're going to want to see your SAT. So I would say that the only place that you really don't have to worry too much about your academics is if you truly are going for a conservatory. And a conservatory is not for everybody because of its intensity. In any other school, your academics are going to play some kind of a role. And you really want to be the best academic student that you can be. That said, there are many, many schools in this country with fabulous music programs that are happy to accept their threshold to be a B, a B plus, an A minus. Some schools maybe even would take a B minus. There's a much wider range of schools than people realize that will accept students who are not necessarily 4.0.
Yeah, unfortunately, everyone just looks at the top bracket and they kind of tend to forget about the other schools that offer a fantastic education but may not have the brand name associated with them.
The
Um,
other thing about that, if I could just stick something into that, is that sometimes as a music student, you need to what we might consider underreach academically. So when you look at all those rubrics and you look at all those numbers and you see that you can get into Middle Tennessee State University with what amounts to a 3.2 and maybe an 1100 SAT, and they actually have a little bit of a formula. And if you hit their formula, you can get in there. And if you've got a student who's got a 3.8, you're saying, well, I don't want to go to a school where people are going in who are getting a 3.2. You need to adjust your thinking a little bit. And remember, first of all, if you're taking a Bachelor of Music in that school, you are going to be a super busy person. And second of all, these kinds of schools very often have honors programs where they're trying to attract the students who are their 3.8s or even their 4.0s, and they want to give them more challenging work, academic work, more opportunities, sometimes financial perks, sometimes housing perks. They're happy to do that. They're happy to provide these honors levels courses. So you're actually in that kind of an academic environment, and then you still get these amazing music opportunities. It's not that the only place you're going to get amazing music opportunities is at a school that has a, 9% acceptance rate. So people really need to look at a much bigger picture and not be afraid to consider a school where the average GPA is lower than their GPA.
I wanted to talk to you about a dual major being a viable strategy. But before we get onto that, because I think that would be a slightly longer discussion, I wanted to just briefly touch upon the timeline. When do they have the auditions? Are there different deadlines for when you're applying to a music program as opposed to like a regular academic program?
Yes, that's the short answer. And the longer answer is school by school. Um, and another answer I can give you is I can start from how we counsel our students. Our preferred recommended deadline for a student to have everything ready to submit, and I said that slowly and carefully, is, hold on to your hats, October 15th. Because we feel that if a student has everything ready by October 15th, they can submit what they need to submit on paper, all of their application stuff. And don't forget, if you're going for a music degree, they're going to have possibly the common application or the school application to do, as well as whatever the school supplements are out of that common application, as well as potentially a music school application, which could be a completely separate application that would house the required submissions, the artistic submissions. And the artistic submissions may include a pre-screen, which is an audition to be invited to audition. The pre-screens are usually always doesn't make sense, or they're always video submissions. And this past year, the auditions were all additionally video submissions. So some schools will require you to audition, so they'll decide if they want to take you to the next level. And if they don't decide they want to take you to the next level, we'll say thank you, but we're not inviting you to the next audition, and that school is done with you for that major. So because these things need to be submitted very often as early as November 1st, we feel that if you've got everything ready for October 15th, you actually have a little bit of leeway in case you need to redo a recording, or you need to get your teacher recommendation or something like that. The other reason that students should have this done early is because if they are not submitting a pre-screen and they just need to make an appointment, schedule an appointment for an audition, those appointments are first come, first serve. So we have an expression, the early bird gets the worm. The earlier you submit your application, the earlier you're permitted to request an audition date. Most schools will require you to submit some part of your application, if not the whole thing, before they will open up that calendar and allow you to make your audition appointment. And certainly for someone who might be traveling to the States or to some other regional place to do their audition, they want to get their preferred date. And those dates first come, first serve. When a date is filled up, then you cannot request that date anymore. You've got to request a different date, and that can totally wreak havoc with your schedule for when you're going to do your auditions. So most schools will have somewhere between November 1st and December 1st as a music a music deadline, which means most, if not all, of the components of their music degree need to be in. So if you just give yourself October 15th, then you get all your Common App done, get all your applications done, get all your writing done, be working with your private teacher to establish what pieces you're going to be doing for your audition, and do your recordings, whatever recordings you may need. We recommend doing them around September so they're ready to be submitted. So that's kind of my answer for that one.
Great. We're kind of running tight on time. And I know a lot of the people had a question about being able to do a dual major. You did touch upon it earlier, but there are dual degree programs like Harvard and Berkeley, or Harvard and NEC. How do you prepare for something like that? That's like really up there. Is there some magic pill or anything that you can suggest for students to prepare for such an application? Such a program,
Practice, study, practice. You have to be able to get into both. You have to be academically viable for that school, and your application has to show it. You have to be musically or artistically viable to get into the other program. But you better be ready for some intense lifestyle to be able to do both of those. And they're really hard to do just in terms of your time and your energy and your mental abilities. So you have to really be ready to do that. You really and you really need to look at the curriculum plan for the music program and really be sure it's what you want. A lot of students think they want that double degree, but the music degree in and of itself, like I said earlier, doesn't really open you up to any more doors than just being a really fantastic and well-trained and talented musician will open doors for you. So maybe you just want to study biology and take lessons from a great teacher and have access to a terrific ensemble. You could go to Columbia University, if you can get into Columbia University, and you have all of New York City at your fingertips, plus you have Manhattan School of Music down the street and the Juilliard School, a subway right away, and you have access to teachers, to ensembles. And by the way, Columbia has a lovely music program in and of itself, which isn't necessarily a BM. So you really want to look at your options and not just assume, oh, Harvard has something with New England Conservatory. Okay, I'm going to try for that. You really need to do your research, do your homework, and see what your time is going to be spent at, and see if that's how you want to spend your time, or maybe reconsider what your priorities and what your desires are for your music and for your other academic area.
There is another question here sorry, another one on the dual major. Um, while both colleges consider the application, is it possible for one college to admit you while the other does not?
It depends on the program. That's a school by school decision. Generally, yes, but you need to see school by school. So if you're applying to New England Conservatory, you don't get into New England Conservatory and you get into Harvard, yeah. So, but you need to look. I wouldn't speak for each school because sometimes things change from year to year as well. We certainly know that things have changed, certainly drastically in the past 3 years, and certainly this past year. So I would say take a look at the school. Reach out to the school if it's not clear on their website. I would suggest reaching out to schools that you have interest in, reaching out to their admissions people, and reaching out to their music people, and making yourself known. And don't be afraid to ask those kinds of questions. They're happy to answer them and to clarify all of that for you. That's going to be a school by school decision.
There is another question from Ankit. If a student, if he's doing a bachelor's degree in engineering and wants to do a master's in theater and art, is that possible?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because that master's degree is really going to be predicated largely on your audition. But we assume that along the way during your engineering degree, you're going to have been doing your school theater, the clubs, student run musicals or plays, whatever your theater interests are. But honestly, if you're going for a bachelor's in engineering, I think you're going to have to go for a master's in engineering too. So someone might not necessarily want to do a degree. There's so many other ways that you can get your artistic desires fulfilled, your artistic hunger fulfilled, your artistic talent, your artistic techniques. There's so many other ways you can do that that don't necessarily have those very specific requirements of a degree. But if you come out of that engineering program and you are a phenomenal, well trained and literate actor, and you are able to go for that acting audition for the master's program, and they see something in you, they're going to be happy to take you. But it would definitely help if you've got a resume that does some kind of support, even if it's not a degree.
There's so many questions and so many things that we had planned to talk about. And I quickly want to touch upon a couple of things. Scholarships. Are there a lot of scholarships on offer? Do international students have a separate pool, or is it just one big pool? And if you're good enough, you get something.
That's again a school by school policy. But one of the things that you want to realize is that a theater scholarship, a music scholarship, comes out of the music department. And if the music department wants you badly enough, they will offer you a scholarship. And I don't think that they're likely to worry about whether what high school you went to, what your citizenship is. If they want you badly enough, they will probably offer you a scholarship, try to woo you. So you have to check school by school. The scholarships are not many. They're not massive. If you've got a school that costs $75,000 a year, a good scholarship for an arts student would be maybe 20 to 35,000 a year. Every once in a while, they might throw somebody a full tuition scholarship, or in some schools you might be able to get out of state tuition. The out of state tuition would be in state tuition because they would give you a break on that. So there are different ways that they handle that, but we really can't assume that there are going to be a lot of scholarships coming to music students in general. And sometimes they're really kind of piddling. They're kind of $2,000. I mean, I'm not going to throw my nose up at $2,000, but that's a drop in the bucket for a school that's $72,000 a year.
There is a question about eminent music courses in conservatories, liberal arts colleges, and also options for double majors. Do you have any resources that you could share with our audience where they could do their research on, how to identify programs and what are the programs out there?
Well, I believe we have a slide that has some resources
Yeah, I just
for finding schools. I mean, that's how we spend a lot of our time counseling students is finding schools that that meet their interests and their needs and their goals. Um, so I would definitely say the place not to look is at the websites that say the 25 best schools for popular singer songwriters because those 25 those are not reliable sources. They're just somebody's opinion, and there are a lot of places that have different kinds of programs and ways that you can craft your own program and create your own major in a sense that may not be a formal create your own major because again it goes back to what I said in the beginning. You don't need a degree in music to be a great musician. If you want to get the best return on investment from the school that you're going to, you want to take courses that you need to take that you can't get outside of the school. You can get all of the training you need in a non-school environment. However, the school degree lays it all out for you, provides it all for you. So there definitely is something to be said for taking that degree. But if you have other interests, you really want to consider if this is the best way to spend your time. And I know I'm talking myself out of a job when I say that, although we do help students in those ways as well. But you really want to, you can use those lists from those books. You can use Big Futures on the College Board, and those other kinds of search engines. And I didn't include that or any of those search engines on the resources. So for someone coming from another place, you also want to consider where do you want to be. If you want to be in the Pacific Northeast or the Pacific Northwest or the Northeast corridor, there are schools in both of those places. You want to come to the middle of the United States and experience us there. There are fabulous schools in that part of the country. You want to go where the weather's warm, where the weather is cold. We have so many choices here. So sometimes it's a good idea to focus your attention on some of those other factors first and say, okay, I'm coming from India. I don't want to travel another 6 hours to get to the West Coast. I'd rather go to New York and then goes from someplace from New York or Boston or Philadelphia or Miami. Stick on the East Coast. We have tons of opportunities and schools, famous and non-famous, and those kinds of books or a good search engine would be a terrific place to start. And again, if I can leave you with one message, reach out to the schools that are of interest to you, connect with them, make yourself known, go to their open houses, go to um, their online virtual tours, their information sessions, meet up with their counselors. Counselors are happy to talk to you, and get to know the schools from that perspective.
great. There is two more questions.
Okay.
2022 entry, will auditions be online?
We're actually trying to put together a document of to figure that out. We've got a query that's going out to a lot of schools, many schools, to find that out. We're doing that through the National Association for College Admission Counseling, called NACAC, of which I am on several committees, and so we're trying to formulate that answer. The answer is some schools have announced what they're doing. Some schools are still not sure. Most schools that we've heard from so far have some kind of hybrid. If you can get to an on-site audition, that's great. If you can't, they will accept video or submissions. Many schools, if you're coming from another country, many schools have always allowed video submissions. We've always recommended if you can get to the campus, get to the campus, but we know that that's not a practicality. And this year we still have some questions about that, which of course is always subject to change if things in the world change. Then schools, they want you to audition and they're going to try to get you to audition whatever way they can. But a lot of schools have not announced yet. So you got to look school by school.
That's great, Amy. There is one question about what's the best way to pursue vocal music?
First of all, it depends on the vocal music you're talking about. Are you talking about being a classical singer, an opera singer, a musical theater singer, a Western pop, kind of singer-songwriter? The best way to pursue it is to work with a teacher, work with a coach. No matter any of those, you should be working with a professional who knows how to guide you vocally. Vocal students can get into tremendous trouble if they've got poor training. When I say trouble, I mean physical problems with their voice, where they have to have things as bad as surgery to correct these problems. So you really want to work with a great teacher, and then to look again at the kind of music that you want to study and why you want to study that, because you're going to be asked in most places, why do you want to study this thing? And whatever it may be. So when it comes to being an opera singer or a classical singer, you need to have a background in it. You need to have some repertoire. You need to try to have some experience. Same thing with being a pop singer, or very often we have singer-songwriters, singers who write their own songs and who perform their own songs as well as cover the songs of other well-known artists. And but for all of them, guidance is the first place. And very often those teachers will be wonderful starting points for schools that they know about to guide you toward beyond just the really famous ones, which would be Berkeley, Belmont, University of Southern California, and NYU. There are many other schools besides that. Not as many as in the UK, by the way. Not as many in the US as in the UK for popular singing, but we still have our fair share. So I would say use your teacher as a starting point.
Well, I don't think the questions will ever end, but I can't thank you enough. If you would like to share your email with our attendees, and if they want to reach out to you, that would be great. For the recording, the recording will be available on our website, and the website, I'm putting the website information into the chat.
Okay, I'll put this into the chat as well.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure, Amy. It's been most insightful, absolutely. And can't thank you enough.
Thank you so, so much. And thank you to everyone who came to join us today. And I'd be happy to, speak with people, email people. I think we have a raised hand, but yes. I can't control that. So please do reach out, and please go back and watch the recording. And any questions I don't have answers to, I'm happy to go take a look and do some research on them for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.